it's half as wide as this. There are wetlands, especially at the south end, and it would be a problem. I think there are more complicated issues in trying to do something with that than, for example, something that's less constrained.
This is 100 feet wide?
Correct.
This question that I have also is, how has the property changed as it's been used? In other words, if it's been held in some kind of private use, practical private use, has the property changed in terms of its access?
I don't think so, but I haven't really gone back through any records. I haven't looked at older aerial photos to see what it is. It doesn't appear that there's any change there, and I'm sorry I can't tell you exactly how long that driveway has been in this location, but I do believe it goes back to at least the mid-'80s, but I haven't confirmed that.
I think we actually had aerials that Carl Ayres showed us. He was working in the town attorney's office on this issue when it first came up as a request via that letter. And I do believe that if you look at the 1984 aerial or something, you can actually see a path going all the way down to the water. And then every 6 or 7 years, the path becomes narrower and narrower to the point where it's obliterated. And it turns into just a driveway leading to the adjacent property.
I'm sorry.
So there was actually an aerial showing it.
Okay. So that's fairly it at this point. As I said, this was kind of
your recommendation is, what do you, that we study it, or what is your...
Well, I would think the next step, if you want to bring public access here, you have to address some questions in terms of what type of access, how many vehicles, if it's vehicles. You know, for example, at the East Lake Nature Preserve, it's a fairly soft sand path that leads down there. So if you have a truck,
it's a fairly narrow opening,
and it's narrow. You know, two vehicles are not going to pass each other there, and if you don't have four-wheel drive, it's probably not a good decision to try and drive down there much.
But this certainly has, from the way you describe it, breadth that very few accesses have.
On East Lake, yes, that's correct.
Can I just ask you, I know Larry Penny is also going to speak to this, and he probably has a longer history, I don't know, but with the LWRP, but this LWRP, the underlying ultimate purpose of LWRP is what?
I think it's a coastal policy document, so it affects a little bit of everything, and certainly access to the waterfront, which is important in any coastal town, is part of that. Obviously, there are other recommendations in there, and there are chapters on almost everything, including agriculture and historic preservation.
So it's a comprehensive plan regarding the waterfronts. Specifically, ours is all the waterfronts within East Hampton Town.
That's a fair way to put it. It's also, I think it's also important to recognize that it's a local adaptation of the state's coastal policies. So the state has these, I think there are 45 coastal policies that a municipality can customize those policies to themselves as long as they're consistent with the state guideline, and develop their own long-range plan for their...
One of the plans that we found out through the dock issue is, this is the message I took away, is that we are supposed to be encouraging public access and not discouraging it. Is that a fair representation of what the LWRP
I think yes. If you read that public access chapter, it definitely encourages public access. It also, and I didn't really get into it, it also speaks to trying to work through conflict among different user groups. You know, more passive beach going and beach driving, for example, is always a hot button issue.
Is this a place where people could go lie on the beach? This isn't a beach access.
No.
There's not really a way to get there now. So it is a place
where... But
where...
there's no beach. My understanding of Lake Montauk, there's no beach. You don't lie down on the sand the way you do at the ocean.
You could. I guess there's enough...
There's a beach. There's a beach down
There's enough
the road.
sandy beach that you could.
How much is it? 10, 15 feet? Is that what it is?
You know, it varies with the tide, so I'm kind of hesitant to give you a number there.
Now, has there been a planning board position, or is it an enforcement position on when a neighbor has the road access blocked for a private driveway?
I don't really have any information about that, and that's not something that we have traditionally looked into.
Yes.
Who owns the lake bottom there? My house on East Lake Drive, I own the land because it was owned by the Montauk Beach Association, or Development Association. I own the land in the lake in front of my house and the next house.
You're absolutely right. I believe we own the land in front of
East
town,
Hampton.
in front of this piece of property.
That's right.
And do we own to the north?
Yes.
Contiguous to the north?
It's right here, I see.
Yeah.
Well, that underwater property goes farther north than just this
Right,
road.
Right, so we own that. We, the town.
Yep.
We own that. We own some land. Okay, so it clearly, what we're learning today is that it was addressed in the LWRP, and the LWRP promotes public access, and we have the largest, I guess what you're saying is, the largest entrance to the lake right now, LWRP access, potential access.
And this is really just the town road properties. I don't know, besides the East Lake Nature Preserve and one other property that I understand is being used for wetland remediation. I didn't look at any other waterfront properties that the town owns. This is specifically a road.
Has the owner of this property ever been in touch with the planning department?
The owner of...
The driveway?
Yeah, I've spoken to the owner.
Is there any issue that you're aware of that would deny our ability to make it an access?
I don't know. I know the owner has strong opinions on the subject, but I think that it's best. I don't want to misquote somebody. I don't want to put words into their mouth. And one perception, though, is that it's a town road. A driveway comes off a town road like any other driveway. But again, this is not property right access. I don't know if there's an easement over that. These are some of the things that, I'm sure Mr. Jelnicki would tell you, really go into looking into who can do what, where. I don't know if the length of time gives him some type of vested right.
No, I don't believe so. I have been doing, I was talking to the town attorney's office a little bit because I want to tell the answer to that legal question. And let me ask you a question. So we get a letter from a constituent saying this is supposed to be open and open it. And then we have an LWRP which says, I'm looking at page, the page that has the chart that you referred to where it says
Correct.
public launching ramp for this property, because she references in this letter that it's supposed to be public, so we pull the LWRP and it says put a launch ramp there, or at least that's what the words say. And the introduction to those words, in the introductory language, it says, public access and recreation policies recommend a variety of measures to improve access to the water and recreational use. While in aggregate these recommendations would be costly, a modest program of annual capital improvements will result in substantial incremental progress at a reasonable cost to the town. All of that is by way of introduction of a question. So we get a question, we have an LWRP. It seems almost as though just as somebody brings a violation to our attention, thank you. I wanted to say conscience, but that wasn't quite the word, attention. And we have an obligation to then deal with it. It seems to me it's almost as though this is brought to our attention. What are we supposed to do as a board? Do you know?
That's a question to me?
That is a question.
Okay. Well, again, I think one thing to bear in mind here is that one of the overarching guideline here for the LWRP is put the natural resources first. So you don't want to do anything that would knowingly degrade the quality of the resource, which is really the shoreline, the barrier dune, and that offshore profile. I think you have to, my opinion, and this is certainly not an area of expertise of mine, my opinion is